Hello everyone, Sidewind here. Today I'm going to be talking about the Empiricism subclass of the Investigator. For this video, I am expecting you to have watched the Level 1 video on the Investigator class itself, and I chose to split apart the subclass and the main class because of the number of abilities in most of the Investigator subclasses and the base class. So now to get started. The Empiricism Investigator is sort of like the most default investigator in my opinion, and the closest to Sherlock Holmes. That's because its abilities allow it allows all the characters to essentially do a bunch of different things effectively to farther their investigations. And this slide is just a summary of everything this subclass gives. First off, it gives one additional intelligence-based skill. That's either Arcana, Crafting, Occultism, Society, or any lore. And this is on top of anything you already have gotten. And the Investigator has a lot of skills, so very likely you'll use this to pick up the lore if you already took all of these skills, because you will have the skill points for that. Then the next thing that the Empiricism Investigator gets is That's Odd. This is an investigator feat which allows you to notice one thing whenever you enter a new location, which is out of the ordinary and non-obvious. The skill description says, for instance, a giant blood stain on the floor is obvious. So this ability is not going to let you notice that because you already have. This is going to let you notice something a little less obvious, like for instance, a book tilted the wrong way on a bookshelf. Note that That's Odd requires a lot of GM input and GM cooperation. So if you're planning on playing an Empiricism Investigator, make sure that you tell your GM early so that they can prepare appropriately. And then the last thing the subclass gives is Expeditious Inspection. This allows a free action use of Recall Knowledge, Seek, or Sense Motive once every 10 minutes. This is supposed to be just like a gut, I know what's going on here ability. Very much like Sherlock Holmes. So now I'm going to talk about That's Odd a little bit more, summarizing how the flow of this ability works. So to start, you enter a new location or one which has significantly changed since you last were there. So for instance, if you're walking into a room for the first time where a murder has occurred, then this ability should trigger. Whereas if you've come back to this room for the third or fourth time and nothing has changed, you don't get to use this ability again. But if you come back to that room and find, oh, the body's been removed, and perhaps other things have gone missing, then perhaps this ability activates. This is up to the GM, and you should not try to push it one way or the other, because it's very specific to things that you do not know. Next, the GM tells you one thing which is out of the ordinary and not immediately obvious. Any GMs watching this video should know that yes, you do have to think through this during your prep, just a little bit. Note that sometimes the GM might also just say there is nothing out of the obvious, and that is also a use of this ability. So for instance, if you walk into a library that no one has been in, then obviously there won't be something odd. It's just a library, then you won't get anything new from this ability. And if the GM does tell you something odd, like for instance, a drawer hanging at an odd angle, or a notebook thrown in the corner in a really awkward way under a blanket, then you can investigate farther to learn why something is suspicious. You do not automatically know why something is off. You just know something's off. There are some important things to note just to make this completely clear. You do not immediately know why something is wrong. You just know something's off. And second, the ability requires significant GM participation and preparation. So that's something to just remember if you pick this subclass. Again, tell your GM early. Do not show up to a session 5 minutes before with the character rolled up. Then, Expeditious Investigation. This is probably the most complex of these abilities, aside from That's Odd. That's Odd is very GM based. This one is mechanics based. So essentially, it lets you, as a free action, use any of these actions. Which one you want to use will depend on the situation and your skills. And all of them take one action. typically. However, you get to use it as a free action. This is a once every 10 minutes ability. So basically, if you use treat wounds once, then you're past that and you can use this ability again. So first off, recall knowledge. The way this works is first, you say you're going to try and learn something about either a creature, an object, or really just anything, and then the GM selects a skill to be rolled against. For instance, if you're asking about undead, it could be religion or occultism. If you're asking about an animal, it's probably nature. If you're asking about some weird monster, it's probably arcana or occultism. And you might get to use a lore skill. Lore skills lower the DC, whereas general skills like arcana and occultism have the highest DC. So generally, the more specific the skill is, the lower the DC is. Once the skill has been selected, you roll 1d20 and add your skill bonus. This roll is done secretly. On some tables, the GM might roll it. On other tables, you might have, say, a dice tower facing the GM that you drop your die into and it rolls on the other side. I know that a lot of virtual tabletops now have a secret roll functionality where only the GM sees the result. Then the GM determines the result. On a critical failure, you gain false information. Basically, you believe it's true, you don't know it's false, but it is. On a success, you learn the truth. On a critical success, you learn the truth and gain additional info. Sometimes the GM might do this as allowing you a follow-up question. Other times the GM will just give you more information. The second option for expeditious investigation is seek. This is used to find hidden objects or creatures, or notice things that you previously have not detected. The way this works is first you seek over an area, usually under 30 feet by 30 feet, examining for hidden or undetected creatures or objects. The DC may go higher if this area is far away, or you can't touch it. Second, the GM rolls a hidden perception check based off your character's DC and compares it to the DCs of the objects and creatures in the area. This is usually just a set DC for, say, finding a hidden item, or perhaps their deception DC. On a success, undetected creatures become hidden. Hidden creatures become observed, and you also can gain a clue as to the whereabouts or of any object, or learn the object's location. Some GMs will likely interpret this as one object because of what the critical success does. On a critical success, undetected and hidden creatures become observed, and you learn the location of every object in the area. In some cases, the two effects might be separated into being two separate checks, say one for objects and one for creatures. It just depends on the GM. The last one is sense motive. This is essentially trying to go, is this guy lying? Is this guy not quite telling the truth? Is he magically manipulated? You know. And the way it works is, again, a hidden perception check against the target's deception DC. On a critical failure, you get a false sense of the creature's intentions. So say you're rolling against someone who's mind controlled. In this case, you would think, oh, that guy's perfectly normal. He's not mind controlled at all. He's just a weirdo. On a failure, you believe what the creature wants you to believe, or that they are behaving normally. So if you're trying to go talk to a cultist and figure out, well, are they actually in this cult? In this case, you would believe that they're telling the truth when they say, no, I'm just a simple farmer. On a success, you can tell whether the creature is behaving normally or not, but you do not know their intentions or detect any magical manipulation. So again, back to the guy who's got the mind control spell on the street. In this case, you know something's wrong about it, but you don't know that he's being magically manipulated. For the cultist, you can tell that perhaps he's repeatedly licking his lips or repeatedly twisting a finger or acting in ways that indicate that he might not be telling the truth. On a critical success, you just know the creature's true intentions and any magic which is affecting the creature. So for the magic guy on the street, you know, yes, he's under magical control. You might not know who's controlling it. Whereas the cultist, you would immediately know, yes, this is a cultist. He's just lying to me. Together, those two abilities make up the Empiricism Investigator subclass. And that is all I have for today. If you have additional questions or comments on any part of this subclass, please ask below. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the future.